Welcome back. The topic of this presentation is literacy and students with additional disabilities, and I'm really excited to talk to you about students with additional disabilities because as we know that 30 to 50% of students have some additional disabilities. In the United States, we've started to call this group Deaf Plus, and it's because they have some additional learning needs. And what we know about students with additional disabilities is that that additional disability is kind of multiplicative. It's not a hearing loss and a learning disability is +2. It's really kind of +3 because it affects the processing and it affects how we attend. And so we just have a lot of students who have additional disabilities. So some of the objectives that I've set for this session are that I want to help you understand that we have to adjust the curriculum in order to really meet the needs so that they can go out and be productive citizens. I want to talk about a process that we call backward planning because I think it's real important to understand that we want to help students create the lives that they want for themselves. I want to share with you some resources that you can use also, so when you're finished watching this video that you can access a variety of different resources because this is a very complex issue. So as I've said, between 25 and 50% of students have an additional disability. That number has been consistent across time and also across countries. We hear this in the UK, we hear this here in Australia, we have the same percentage in the United States and Canada. The downside of this issue is that most teachers are not prepared to work with this population. They don't understand how to meet those students' needs. And unfortunately, what we have is lots of students who are leaving school not prepared for adulthood. And when you really think about it, the purpose of school is preparing people to live after school. Because if you leave school at age 21, what are you going to be doing for the next 50, 60, 70 years? So our job is always to be looking at how do we prepare people to be contributing members of society and so that they can live productive lives. Because of the complexity of this issue, you as a professional can't do this on your own. You really need to pull the resources of a multidisciplinary team. Other people who have expertise so that this team can use assessment data, so this team can collaboratively problem solve what is needed to help this student reach his or her goals. When we want that, and we're going to set up a multidisciplinary team, what we really want to do as much as we can is invite the family to be part of this because it's their child. They know that child the best. And they're going to be there when you're gone. So let's bring that family in. Let's find out from them what motivates this child. What do they see as the future for this student? These are very important people that need to be involved in that team. As a student gets older, we also want to involve the student as much as we can. Self-determination is an important part of our makeup. So if we can, we want to involve that student to help future plan. And that's what I'm going to talk about next is what we call backward planning. And we do this a lot. If we're having a dinner, what we do is we backward plan. Who's going to be there? How many people are going to be there? What do these people like to eat? Where should these people sit? Should we do it outside? Should we do it inside? What should we serve for the food? What should we serve for the drink? What should we dessert? We do backward planning all the time, but we don't really do it sufficiently in education. So what we want to do is we want to think about where is this student going to be when he or she leaves school? One of the best ways, as I said, is to involve the family and to involve the student, and we want to ask some of these very important adult questions. What age do you want to graduate from school? We want the student to start thinking about his or her future. So are you going to graduate 21, 18? We want to find out, what kind of work do you want to do? What do you see yourself doing when you leave school? It's very important to start thinking about that so that we can choose courses that the student can take, so that we can choose community opportunities that the student can be involved in, so that we can choose activities in school that the student can be involved in. What kinds of things do you see yourself doing? What are your interests? What are your passions? Where do you want to live? We want to kind of think about what kind of living situation. Are you going to live in this town? Are you going to move to Sydney? I know you don't want to do that. Are you going to go over to New Zealand? Are you going to come to the United States? But where are you going to live when you get done with school? What are you going to do with your free time? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? As an educator, when I know that, I know how to work with students a little better. I can make materials that are interested. I can bring things in so that I know what that student is interested in. And then the all-important thing about transportation. How are you going to get from home to school? How are you going to get from school to work? How are you going to get around the community? Maybe we need to teach those skills, how to take the tram, how to take the bus. Use these skills while we're in school, where we can provide the scaffolding that they need in order to learn those skills. And who's going to be your friends? As I've said in previous videos, we are social creatures. We need to have friends, and we need to sort of be creating those while we're in school so that when we leave school, we have people that we can do things with. And then, are you going to go to any kind of post-secondary program? Are you going to try and get an education? Are you going to try and develop a specific skill? So backward planning is a very important procedure that we want to use with students with additional disabilities. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's called an individual needs and curriculum focus. And this is really based on assessment data. And it's a general guideline that I want you to think about, and I want you to be able to share with other professionals and with the family. We're going to think about this from three sides. First is the general education curriculum. This is what we get in the regular school, and that's reading, writing, math, science, social studies. And what we want to do, of course, is make the appropriate accommodations and modifications. Then we have what we call the specialized curriculum, which may be such things as language, speech, auditory training, study strategies, self-advocacy, deaf studies, and social skills. Special skills that kids who aren't picking up these things themselves, that they can be taught those while we're working with them. And then the third component is life skills, things that most of us picked up outside of school, but for kids with additional disabilities, we may need to help them learn. That would be such things as self-care, budgeting, planning meals, travel, community safety, how to use medications, and community-based instruction. Supported employment. So we have general education, specialized curriculum, and life skills. And so we're going to use this assessment data that we're going to collect, and this multidisciplinary team is going to talk about what does this student need. As you see when you look at this PowerPoint, you'll see that the first one is a student who is functioning around age appropriate to a little bit behind. That student is going to have a curriculum that is mostly general education with a little bit of specialized education. Speech, auditory training, language, literacy. If that student is close to his or her peers, then we're going to just add a little of kind of that special deaf ed stuff. Now the student who starts to be much more delayed, 1.5 years to 3 years, now we have to shift that curriculum to help that student. And as you see here, it's almost divided into three equal parts. The general education part, the deaf education or specialized curriculum part, and now we're going to start emphasizing some of those life skills, so to make sure that that student is prepared for adulthood. Now, when a student gets significantly behind 3 or more years, then we really want to shift the focus of the curriculum. And it gets a lot smaller because a lot of the content in the general education classroom is going to be going over that kid's head. That student is not going to be able to access the content. So here we have a very small portion for general education. We have a much stronger portion or a larger portion for the specialized curriculum, and even a larger portion for those life skills. Now, keep in mind that I'm not saying to you as the teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing students that you have to deliver this whole curriculum. This can be done by people who have those specialized skills. But you are the expert on deafness, and you can talk to them about the accommodations and modifications, and you're part of this team helping them understand what this student needs. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about a variety of different resources that you can use. So the first one is called high interest, low vocabulary books. So if we have a kid who has a learning disability, is a little bit behind, but can spend most of his time in the general education class, but he can't read at that level with his peers, then we want to start using these high interest, low vocabulary books. We're trying to reduce the cognitive load, but we want the student to still be able to access what these important topics are. So there are lots of narratives books on high interest, low vocabulary, and there's lots of expository on high interest, low vocabulary. So what we know is the best way to become a good reader is reading. So if we can cut down the complexity of it and get the student reading, that way they'll succeed. If it's too difficult, students are just going to stop. And that's what we all do. It's our natural tendency. We want to either approach success or avoid failure. The controlled vocabulary and the reading levels gives students who are older access to content that they can learn and use. We want it to be a compelling story. We want the topics to be issues that are of interest to them. And we want it to be in a format that doesn't look like a baby book. We want it to look like a book that is very similar to the books that his or her peers are reading. And then we want it to be carefully introduced and with reinforcements. On this PowerPoint, I've provided 3 separate high interest, low vocabulary resources. Each one of these publishers produce books that are very valuable, both narrative and expository, and they tell you the age interest as well as the reading level. A couple more resources that I want to share with you is one's called the Tar Heel Reader. And this is a wonderful resource that allows you to go, it's on the internet, and it has lots and lots of stories that allow you to either download the story and publish and print the book, or you can create your own. It's a very wonderful resource that students love, and it's all on a lot of topics that students enjoy. I think there's also something that we want to think about is when we change our reading focus, we want to look at the functional reading objectives that students are going to need when they go out into the world after they finish high school. So here are some examples. Identify personal data about themselves so that they know their names, that they know their addresses, they know how to contact emergency people, they know how to provide information on documents and know where those documents are. That they can respond to written information such as safety signs and labels on medication and price tags so they know what things cost. That they can comply with simple notes, that somebody can write them a note and they know that take the meat out of the freezer, make sure you take the garbage out. We want them to help locate and utilize simple charts, diagrams, maps, and menus so that they can go to a restaurant and order for themselves. All of this takes practice, and we want to do this while we can provide this during their school years. What about employment applications? So help them fill out applications, help them understand the forms that they're going to have to fill out if they need to apply for disability support services. How do you carry out directions? How to use schedules and bulletin boards. How do you read the schedule for the tram if you're trying to go downtown? That's very complex. When I looked at it yesterday, I thought it's not easy figuring out where you're going to go, how much money it costs, and and the schedule. So these are things that need to be trained. And then how to use the newspaper as a resource, how to use the internet as a resource. So there's a variety of life skills curriculums that I'd like you to look into, and they look at things such as personal care, grooming, cooking, dining, housekeeping, and shopping. And a lot of these life skills curriculums have diagrams, they have cookbooks, and they have step-by-step directions that you can use to help these students develop these skills. And when you look at this PowerPoint, you'll see a variety of these curriculums. What I'd like to end by saying a few things to you, and that is, first, this is a population that is underserved. They need people who care about them and provide the services they need while they are in school so that they can become productive citizens and have rewarding lives. The impact of a disability, an additional disability, is multiplicative. It's not just additive. We need to keep the big picture so that we work backwards and that we're preparing students for the lives that they want to lead when they leave school. The key to that is assessment and collaboration involving the family and involving the student and community agencies as much as we can. There are a lot of resources available online. We just have to get out of thinking that this is a deaf issue and understand that there are lots of students who have significant support needs, who have learning disabilities, who have dyslexia, and we just have to bring all of those resources together and use your expertise in deafness to provide quality services for these students. Thank you very much.